The last podcast with Mike Rashid was awesome. Lots of people subscribed, lots of likes. We're looking to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of this summer. We're doing a good job. We're on a good pace. This conversation with the Jason Lamar, how to not identify with your weakness. Make sure to like, comment below what is resonating with you. What are your thoughts on our conversation? Some of the points that we talk about, quite controversial for a lot of people, especially in this soft society that we live in. So comment below. What are your thoughts? Give it a like, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe, share, let your friends know. A great conversation with the Jason Lamar.
There are 7 billion people in the world. Not everyone's going to get this.
Great morning, great afternoon, great evening, wherever this conversation finds you. I am Travis Gray. This is Gray Transforms, and today we are blessed to be transforming with another great guest, Jason Lamar. You might know him as the Jason Lamar on Instagram, other social media platforms. He's opening up a can of whoop ass for your bitch ass men on social media, and that's why I'm stoked to have this conversation. Jason, how are you feeling, brother?
I am great, man. That was a great intro. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. You really been opening up a can of whoop ass for these weak men on social media. So I've been loving that. When I first came across it, I don't know what the post was, the first post that I saw from you, but it was just like, you're a bitch. And it reminded me of like, Too Short, my favorite words, bitch.
Hey, love it, man. But nah, we need some more. We need some more accountability in the world today. Everyone's soft and everyone wants to coddle everything and make excuses and all of that. So I'm just trying to provide an alternative, so to speak.
Yeah, I think you're just honest and real. My first language is American Sign Language, and when you interact with deaf people, the whole language is very direct. There's no sugarcoating like what a person looks like. If you are a fat man, then it will like this is just your description, and it's not about hurting your feelings. It's about reality. And so it can be very straightforward, and that tends to be how my personality is with people. And that does kind of like take people off of their high heels and their comfort, and puts them like in a defensive kind of place. But I like that you're being really straightforward and talking to these men this way.
Yeah, I like what you said about it being a direct thing because I think nowadays they've kind of skewed it and put it onto the speaker for describing the person rather than the person for being able to be described that way. Like if I call you fat and you're fat and that's offensive to you, the problem isn't that I pointed it out. The problem is that you're fat and I was able to point it out. So rather than looking to me to change how it is that I'm describing you, you should be looking to yourself to change how it is that you're able to be described.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's an interesting thought. Like if it's just like there is some like abrasiveness, there's some level of value in compassion for another person, but if the reality fits what I'm speaking to, how can be upset about that? It is their own insecurity that kind of flares up. They become emotionally charged from some place that they haven't dealt with. And I do really enjoy stand-up comedy. In stand-up comedy, a lot of these comedians have a self-deprecating humor, at least in the beginning of their sets. They'll kind of come out to the crowd at the beginning with a self-deprecating humor, just like recognizing what the audience is seeing in them as they are on stage. If they are a fat person and some other comedian is like making fun of them for that or whatever, it's not like hurting, they're not cutting their heart out and dying to it. It's just the reality, and it's fine.
Yeah, and I think that the best thing that anyone could possibly do is live in a world of reality that's kind of anchored by the truth, because that's what allows you the power to better your situation or better whatever it is about yourself that you're not fond of. But when you want to dance around it and paint it as all these other things or kind of assign these blamers, things that you could place blame on. It doesn't really help you out at all, and all you're doing is kind of cementing yourself further into where it is that you are. And just in regards to the compassion thing, a lot of people will say that they say you should be more compassionate, but the way that I view it is the compassionate thing to do. Like, if I truly want you to be better, if I truly want you to improve yourself, then I need to tell you the hard things that you don't necessarily want to hear, because that's what's going to allow you to, again, improve yourself. But if I was to just tell you that it's okay, or and the blame that you're applying to everything else, be it society or your genetics or where it is that you were born, all I'm doing is reinforcing the idea that it's okay for you to continue being where you are and there's nothing that you could do about it. So that to me is not the caring, loving thing to do. The caring, loving thing to do is to give you the tools that you need to improve.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It reminds me of something I heard you say. Just like I'm also reminded of a friend that's dealing with alcoholism, and he is, I have compassion for, like, I know that he is going through a tough time, and he's had all of these cycles of being in and out of jail and homeless and not having a job, having a job. And we've had many conversations over the years. I've had this friend for a long time. And, my advice to him, or my encouragement, my trying to help him get into the best, the best form of his life has not stuck. He hasn't, maybe he has held on to some of the conversations that we've had together for a few months, and it's working for a while, but then he just kind of reverts back to his same cycle. And I can have compassion for the kind of pain that, like I understand that the pain is there. And at some level, I would be proud of experiencing the pain. I know that my history, I've had hard times, and I'm sure have hard times, and others have gone through hard shit. And I like that I went through hard shit. I like that it wasn't easy to get to where I'm at. So I have compassion for the pain, and kind of proud of him to experience some of the pain. It's necessary to build the resilience that he needs to get on the other side of this alcoholism cycle. But the reality is that is like a weak choice that he's making on a regular basis. And that was something I heard you say. Do you want to say more to that?
Yeah, so going specifically with we could go with the alcohol, we could go with any sort of substance abuse, or even rope in the eating disorders and stuff that people like to talk about nowadays. All of these at the very root, like, I know people like to overcomplicate this stuff and say it's all of these other things, but the reason that it's difficult to quit drinking, the reason that it's difficult to quit smoking, the reason that it's difficult to eat less really just boils down to the fact that at some point throughout the day, you're going to think about smoking or drinking or eating some food or whatever, and you're going to give in to that thought because you do not like having the thought. But those are all very temporary things, and most people are not able to push past that very, very temporary discomfort in order to get to the long-term betterment of themselves. And that's what it is that keeps them where it is that they are. And that's a form of weakness there. Anytime you sit there and you can't beat your own thoughts that you have, this is not anything other than the fact that you are not mentally strong enough to do it. You see the same thing with people who have trouble getting out of bed in the morning. They're not a morning person or whatever the case may be. But what that boils down to at the end of the day is you're thinking about going back to sleep. You're thinking about being tired, and you don't have the mental strength to overcome that thought and go on about your day anyway. And the alcohol thing, you don't have the mental strength to go on about your day having the thought of alcohol in the back of your mind. And that is absolutely nothing but weakness. And then when you go into the mind altering substances, like the alcohol, the smoking, whatever drugs it may be, it is still at the end of the day you not being strong enough to handle whatever thoughts it is that you are having, that you are trying to quell in some capacity. Like, people will say, well, it helps me deal with my trauma. Okay, that's fine, that's cool, but your trauma is ultimately memories. So what you're saying is that you're not strong enough to remember things and not react negatively to that, so you need to ingest some sort of poisonous substance to get rid of the thoughts that you can't handle thinking. And if that's not weakness, I don't know what is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely not strength. It's not showing strength. If it's not strength, then it can only be its opposite.
Period.
If you are experiencing that discomfort of having that thought, having that oh man, I really would like this thing right now, and the discomfort is that I don't have this thing right now, and you can't sit in that discomfort for uh, a fairly short period of time often. Like, if I'm hungry, if I'm fasting, I think over the last few years, I've definitely built a metabolic resilience that it's okay for me to be hungry. If anything, I like to be hungry. I like when my body is kind of wanting some food and I'm not giving it to my body right away. That has built like a like a mental clarity and fortitude, metabolic resilience for sure. But this moment of discomfort, it passes very quickly. It's very fleeting, this moment of discomfort. But it's interesting when you're speaking about substances and kind of like the dependency is weak, the victim mentalities, those are weak. But there is this idea in psychotherapy. There's kind of like two ways to approach substance disorders. One would be an abstinence model. That might be more of like the AA model. The AA model is like, well, I just abstain. I keep going to these meetings, reminding me of the stories around us. We can sit in the stories of just how bad it gets when we do go back to the alcoholism. And so we can be reminded of, is it more discomforting to have the feeling of, oh, I would really like a drink right now? Or is it more discomforting to know that I am going to go into a deep, dark hole? I'm going to be homeless. I'm going to be out on the street. I'm going to be hurting myself, my family. All of these things is going to just unfold and collapse. My whole life is going to collapse around me. And I know this because it's not just me, it's all the other people that are in this meeting often repeating that. The other side of it is more of like a harm reduction model. And so the harm reduction model is more about your relationship to the thought or the substance. And so can you have a healthy relationship to the thought that, well, alcoholism, alcohol or other substances or eating too much food, whatever these disorders or dysfunctions that I'm experiencing are, my habits are not working for me. Can I have a better relationship to the truth that those habits are not working for me? I have already seen the history. I've already seen how this collapses the world around me. Can I make a new choice? Can I have a better relationship to it? I resonate more with the harm reduction model because it's just about what kind of relationship are you building with yourself and in relation to these bad habits or substances.
So I've never really explored this idea before, but collectively I fall somewhere between the two. Like, I'm a big believer in the idea that going to AA and labeling yourself as an alcoholic and getting up every single day or week or whatever the case may be in front of a bunch of people and saying, hi, my name is Jason, I'm an alcoholic, is harmful to you. It does more harm than good, because when you tell yourself that you are something, you subconsciously live out that role. So when you've labeled yourself an addict for the rest of your life, on some level, you're going to be an addict for the remainder of your life. You might not directly consume the substances, but when you're waking up and saying today is day 3,297 that I haven't had a drink, you're very much still just as much of a slave to the alcohol as you were when you were drinking it. You just now switched the way in which it controls you. Same thing with the idea that you need to continuously go to these meetings and continuously hear these stories to continue to reinforce in your head the idea that you don't need to do this or that it's bad for you or whatever the case may be. You've just switched your dependency, because true freedom from the thing is not constantly trying to fight it off. And I feel like AA is built on the idea that you have a lifelong fight with deciding not to consume alcohol. In the other way, I do believe that the best thing that you could do is recontextualize your thoughts and your beliefs around these things, much like you said prior, which I am very much a fan of. I too like being hungry. I like being tired, because in my mind, when I get out of bed and I'm still tired, I'm showing myself that I can do all of the things that I need to do, even when I'm not in the best of conditions. So adverse conditions help me. And when I'm feeling hungry, I'm showing myself that just because I'm hungry, I don't need to consume this food. I don't need to give into my urges. So I like walking around hungry because that strengthens me. But because that's the way that I have designed my mindset. It sounds like you've done the exact same thing. And you could do the same thing with the alcohol, with the cigarettes, with whatever substance it is that you have, right? But people have this belief that you shouldn't be hungry. This is why people fail on diets. They're like, well, I'm cutting my thing. I'm hungry. What do I do about it? Nothing. It's okay to be hungry. It's okay to be tired. It's okay to want to drink. It's okay to want to smoke. It's okay to be attracted to women or whatever the case may be. The key is learning to control it and learning not to act on it. And those are displays of discipline. And discipline, like everything else, it's a muscle that you learn to, or that you strengthen over time, every single time that you use it. So every single time you have the urge, you have the thought for, man, my day is going hard, it would be really nice to have a glass of whiskey or a beer or whatever it is that people drink, and you tell yourself no, then you are strengthening that discipline. But when you remove all of these things, when you remove the temptation, when you remove the desires, when you remove the negative feelings, and you just have free and clear sailing, that discipline muscle atrophies, the self-control muscle atrophies. So when you are confronted with something, it winds up being this whole entire ordeal, much more than it need to be. This is why people go and they have a drink and they spiral and they go off on a binge for a month, instead of just having the drink and then being like, oh, this is not what it is that I should have done, back to what it is that I'm supposed to be doing, back to what it is that I was doing before, when they had the strong discipline. But again, because they don't have the desire, they don't have the urge, they don't have any of the negative stuff, all of that goes away. So you have to continuously practice these things. And I think a large part of it is reframing how it is that you're looking at the things. Again, because people have the idea that they should never have any of these negative feelings. That's not true. You just need to utilize them properly. And the negative feelings become positive when you assign those types of values to it. When you take that perspective on it that says, I'm feeling hungry right now, but I'm not going to eat, and this is a good thing. This shows me how committed I am to my goal. This shows me my strength. This shows me my willpower. This shows me that I am not a slave to these outside forces. Like, a lot of people have this belief or the idea that their true freedom is being able to act on whatever it is that they feel they want to be. They don't want to live restrictive on their diets. They don't want to be just restricted, right? But if you're a slave to your urges, that again, you're a slave. That's not freedom. Freedom is the ability to have urges, to have thoughts, and to not act upon them. That's what freedom is, because you can't control the thought that pops into your head. You can't control the feelings that randomly pop up. Like, negative thoughts pop into my head all day long, but I don't entertain them. And or urges pop into my head all day long, say, hey, you should go do this, you should go do this, but I don't entertain them. And that's what the freedom is, not being able to go do it, because then you're just controlled by your most base urges. And that is what leads to all of this negativity as a whole. Like I said, recently, people, you talk about 7 deadly sins and stuff. It's a reason that that's not things like murder and assault and very obvious crimes. If you look at sloth, gluttony, lust, it's your most base urges, and giving into those things leads you down a path to nowhere. And it feels really good while you're doing it, but the result of doing it for a very long time no longer feels good. It's the exact opposite, because again, you wind up addicted, you wind up fat, you wind up broke, you wind up all kinds of negative things just from doing what felt best in the moment. And that's what people get from their freedom of living how it is that they felt. So I think that the best thing that you could do is recontextualize these things.
Yeah, I love that, and I think that resonates with this, like the harm reduction model or the relationship. If my relationship can be that I desire this thing, I desire the alcohol. We'll use that as an example for my friend there. If I desire the alcohol, well, what do I take more pride in? Do I take more pride in the idea that I have failed and went to the alcohol? And what you just said is like this, there's a hedonistic aspect to this gluttony and this purpose of pleasure in life. Is that my purpose, just to be pleased by everything? Well, no. And if I do want the pride of being strong, I need the resistance. I need some sort of resistance that I am breaking through, and we can see this in a very physiological way. If you lift weights, it is because of the resistance that you are overcoming, and now that can be applied to all these other things. And if my friend is desiring the alcohol, but their relationship is now transformed to this idea that my desiring the alcohol and not abusing that and deciding not to move towards that is actually what I am taking more pride in. So that is now beginning, at least, to shift their relationship to the urge, to those urges that are coming up in them. I've had relationships with people that were identified as alcoholics, and that, I'm sober. I've been sober this many years, and that's great. This is not meant to villainize that person, or it's not meant to encourage more of the same problems and dysfunctions that is attributed to identifying so strongly with that identity. But it is to bring some awareness, which I think you just did a little bit, to bring some awareness that if I am every day going to these meetings and I'm saying, hello, my name is Travis. I'm an alcoholic and I've been sober for 39 days. When I was young, from ages 17 to 21, I was in and out of jail twice a year 2 times I had to do this outpatient program, this addiction program. And at the time, my addictions were marijuana and psychedelics. And I had to say that because those were the things that I got arrested for. And it was so strange because those were like the least of addictive substances in comparison to the people I was around. I was around people that were heroin addicts and meth addicts, and they were relapsing back and forth and lying about their clean days. But if I'm every day going in and this program is designed for me to identify as this I am an addict, then that is deepening a mental dysfunction and disorder that is not helping me. So the recontextualizing, reframing, the rewriting the narrative around what those things mean to me is really important. As a mental health professional, the idea that these, like a diagnostic statistical manual, the DSM, is created as kind of the bible for identifying diagnosis in clients or in patients, and that whole model, that pathological model, creating a diagnosis for the purposes that they could get the help that they need through their insurance providers or whatever, but it is not to make them better, it is to keep them broken.
Yes, one. So I love that you said that, because I am a big believer in all of these labels cause far more issues than they solve. Like, when you attach these titles to things, like, things live out exactly what it is that you call them, right? Like, if you they do the studies and stuff. If you take children and you tell them they're gifted, they do better at stuff. If you tell them same kids they're stupid, they're not going to do as well as stuff, because this is what it is that they're told. You're carving out a path for them by telling them this. And you do the exact same thing when you label yourself all of these things, whether it's depressed or an addict or even an introvert, right? Whenever you're telling yourself what you are, you're also telling yourself what you're not. So maybe you don't realize it in the moment that you're sitting here saying, I'm depressed, therefore I'm not happy, I'm not in control of my thoughts and all of that. But subconsciously, that's exactly what it is that you're saying. And I am very much opposed to that. And I find it interesting too that people will talk about affirmations as a positive thing, right? You speaking things into existence, but they don't take it in the other direction and look at the fact that calling yourself depressed or saying you have anxiety, these are negative affirmations. And if you have the idea that you could speak positive things into existence, it works in the opposite direction too. You also speak these negative things into existence. So when you tell yourself you have these things, when you tell yourself you have these issues, you continue to perpetuate them. Like, I used to have a huge problem getting up in the morning. I used to tell myself all of the time, I'm not a morning person. This is not something that I could do. And I tried for years to wake up at 5 a.m. My alarm would go off at 5 a.m. I wasn't well rested. I didn't feel amazing or whatever. So I went back to sleep. And it wasn't until I stopped telling myself that I'm not a morning person and that I need to be well rested in order to get out of bed. And I said, you know what? When my alarm goes off, I'm just going to get up no matter how it is that I feel. I started to be able to do it. I used to tell myself all of the time that I had a bad memory and I was never able to remember things. I thought that I was identifying a thing that was the case but I found out that it was the case because I was identifying the thing. And once I stopped saying that I had a bad memory, once I stopped saying that I couldn't remember stuff, all of that changed. And now I'm able to, my memory is perfectly fine. My memory is great, but it changed with the labels. Like, your perception of yourself shapes your reality. Like, all of these things create the world that you live in. And when you look through these different lenses, that is all it is that you could see. Like, when you go to back to the AA thing, when you go to AA and you label alcohol as this humongous giant problem, you're making it into this humongous giant problem. Yes, it's poison. Yes, you shouldn't be drinking it. Yes, it's bad for you. But by the same token, so is paint thinner. But nobody goes into Home Depot and struggles to not drink paint thinner because they're not thinking about it. But you go into a bar and you're struggling to not drink alcohol because you spent all of this time labeling yourself as somebody who struggles to not drink alcohol. When in reality, it's far easier to not drink alcohol than it is to drink alcohol. It literally requires millions of times less effort. All you have to do is nothing. That's the simplest thing in the world. But when you sat there and built it up as this giant thing in your head, every time you're around it, now you're struggling. Not because that's naturally what it is, but because you've convinced yourself that you struggle around these things. You spend all your time around all these other people who struggle around these things and tell you that you're going to struggle around these things. So I think that everyone loves to rush to assign themselves all of these different labels, whether it be ADD, whether it be alcoholism, whatever the case may be. And that shapes who it is that they are. And they think that they've identified, again, their problems, but their problems have been caused by the identification.
Yeah, that I love what you're saying. So much value just like so naturally flows out of you. It's really dope. It does come down to what are you affirming? What are you reinforcing? Or do you want to keep reinforcing this negative outlook on yourself? For a long time, just like all my life, really, I've kind of had a non-belief in headaches. I've kind of not believed in headaches. I don't know if that's a real thing. I know that other people identify with this idea that they have a headache, but I'm like, if I feel some pressure in my head, I guess I just do something about it. I don't know. I don't know why, but I just have never really identified with this idea that I could have a headache. And that has, I think, created less tension and pressure and discomfort in my head around this idea. That's been a narrative that has been in my head, and that was just like a natural narrative, and that has affirmed, reinforced something of positive value in my life because it's not positive for me to believe in my weakness or potential weakness or these things that could potentially harm me. That's not helping me. And so what am I reinforcing? What am I affirming? You continue to speak about like how not difficult it is. It's not difficult. It's 1,000 times, you just said it's 1,000 times less difficult to not drink alcohol than it is to go to you have to get up, you have to get dressed, you have to get into the car, you have to drive to the bar, you have to you have to show your ID just to get into the bar. Then you get into the bar, you have to pay the bartender to make the drink, you have to wait for the drink, and then all of this whole
Yeah, you got to
process
drink
is
the drink.
happening.
Like,
Yeah,
so
there's
many
so much
steps.
that's happening and for it to get down your gullet. And so you're right in saying that. There's my doctoral research has been on free will to some degree. So some major degree it's free will, but I held a group of deaf people in meditation. So I facilitated a meditative experience, made a meditation experience accessible to a deaf population. So in all of this conversation, like being deaf is not something that they can change, right? So is it a weakness in their lives? Yeah, I would say so. And it can also, the weakness can also be the strength. It can also, there's also opportunities in the way that they are being in the world. I've really identified with that. So I'm a coda, I'm a child of a deaf adult. So my mother is deaf. And because of that, I've identified with this adversity in the world, just like a like general concept of adversity. When people experience adversity, that's like, wow, that's awesome. Like it doesn't seem good when you're in it. It doesn't seem good for a black person to deal with racism, but it's like they have kind of like identified you uniquely, nichely outside of the group. And so you don't have to be a part of a group. You can be a unique individual, and so can a deaf person. And there is an extraordinary opportunity that I think even America kind of reinforces. We are living in a blessed country and have a lot of opportunities to reinforce this individualism that Eastern countries don't have as much opportunity to do. But what I wanted to get to was that this famous psychologist, Abraham Maslow, he's one of the founders of my field, transpersonal psychology, and he developed the hierarchy of needs, the self actualization at the top of the hierarchy of needs. He also wrote about this idea of Jonah syndrome. And so, in this free will concept, how difficult is it to make a choice versus not making the choice? To make a different choice, to rewrite the story in our heads about what that choice means or does not mean. He spoke about this thing called Jonah syndrome, and that's this idea that we have this resistance in ourselves, or that we can develop this neurotic resistance inside of ourselves that is avoiding the purpose of our lives, avoiding what God is calling us to do. God is like giving you this direct, hey, Jason, you should go on Instagram and tell people that they are bitches. Tell these weak men that they are bitches because they need to hear it from somebody, because maybe they haven't had a father in their lives, or maybe they just haven't had anybody in their lives to give them the reality that they have been sitting in weakness voluntarily. So, but there's a still like a resistance, and it develops into a neurotic resistance, this pattern of mental dysfunction. And from my research, it seems like the choice, it seems so possible to grab onto the better choice, the better of the two choices. But free will is so thin. It's not tangible. It is an intangible thing. It's a psychological movement, my ability to be in the better truth of the two narratives or something like that, the one that is working for me best. And so I wonder what you think about free will and this idea that, like you were saying, it's easy to make this choice, but what do you think about the men that you see or work with that are experiencing some level of neurotic resistance to making the choice that is actually going to serve them?
Okay. So I want to tie that back to what it is that you said about the adversity or the struggles or whatever the case may be, not seeming like the good thing because they're difficult in the moment. I think that most people's biggest hump is the idea that they need to go through something difficult to get to something good. Because both of the, again, while a choice is easy to make, one choice is easier to follow through with in the moment. It's easier to follow through on the choice to eat the cheeseburger, order the DoorDash, have the drink, whatever the case may be, because you get the instant gratification, you get the negative feeling of, oh, I really want this, that goes away. But when you make the other choice to abstain, you have to sit kind of with the more negative feeling for a little bit, and that takes continued effort to push through. And it's on the other end of that effort that you get the reward. But most people aren't willing to make that trade-off of what they get most immediately next. It's they want the what they want is, again, what they most immediately get next is they want that to be the good thing, not the hard thing. So they opt for the worst choice. They go for the cheeseburger, they go for the drink, they go to sleep in, they go for the girl that's texting them in the middle of the night, they go to play the video games, watch the Netflix, because that's immediately gratifying, that immediately makes them feel good. And the more that you make those choices, the more that you've primed yourself to make those choices. I'm a big believer that all of these things are habits that are created. Like addiction is a habit that you've created. Not being a morning person is a habit that you created. ADD, all of that stuff. These are habits that you've created, but you've done it over and over. So it's much easier to default to that. And it's harder for people to swallow the idea that they need to push themselves through something difficult. And once they accept that, then they have a much easier time, or a better time, of going towards the better choice. But that goes back to, again, what we were talking about in the beginning, is the reframing of the thing as not a problem, not some big terrible thing that needs to be overcome, but a bonus, a part of the journey, a part of what it is that you're going to do, a part of who it is that you're becoming, because it's the things that you go through that ultimately lead to you becoming who it is that you want to be and doing the things that you want to do. Like you said, God calls people to fulfill some sort of destiny, some sort of purpose, whatever the case may be, and people are resistant to that, because with God's calling comes trials and tribulations, it comes adversity, it comes struggles, and they don't want to do that, which is why it takes faith to follow in God's path. Even if you don't believe in God, whatever it is that you believe in, it takes faith and belief to follow in that one. And then on the other side, the inverse of that, if God calls you to be great through trials and tribulations, the devil calls you to do the bad stuff through temptations, through the pleasures. And most people give in to what it is that they're being offered. Here's the fun stuff. Here's what's going to feel good. Here's the sexual gratification, the food, the alcohol, the sleep, the fun, whatever the case may be. And that's more tempting to go down that path, which is why it's what most people wind up going down to begin with. They don't realize until it's too late that that's kind of the pathway to hell, again, so to speak, whereas the path to heaven is paved through the trials and the tribulations. And I think that most people wind up in a position where they don't feel that they have a choice because they don't like both of their choices. They don't like the more difficult choice. They don't like the hard choice. They don't like the choice that leads to the immediate suffering, even though that's what's going to, as a whole, lead to their freedom. And this is a weird analogy, but have you ever seen Saw?
No.
Okay. So at the end of the first Saw movie, a dude, he's chained up in a little bathroom on a pipe, and it's down in some little underground basement thing or whatever the case may be. And he has a hacksaw. in which he could use his hacksaw to cut off his foot, or he could sit there in the bathroom and he could die of
This is the
starvation.
one. It's kind of like a clown mask. Is that right?
Yeah, on the little tricycle thing, he puts people into things. You have to go through this difficult stuff to prove you appreciate your life and all of that. But so the dude's in there in the bathroom with the hacksaw, the option to cut off his foot and crawl to freedom, or the option to sit there and die. Most people sit there and say they have no choice because the other choice is not a key to the lock, but it is the saw. It is the going through cutting off the foot. Yeah, that's going to suck. Yeah, it's going to be very difficult, but that's what's going to ultimately lead to your freedom. But most people are not willing to make that choice as a whole. So they sit there and they stick where it is that they are currently, and they do what it is that they're used to doing, or what it is that they usually done, or what it is that immediately makes them feel good because they want that right now payoff. So I think that the free will thing, if you exercise it in the opposite direction, if you get yourself used to doing the hard choice, then you build that up and it becomes much more difficult to default to the easy choice. It becomes much more difficult to skip the workout when you've made it so that you do the workout every single day, regardless of how it is that you feel. It becomes much more difficult to sleep in when you've got yourself used to getting up every single day. But most people just don't train it in the better direction enough, so they default the other way.
It's coming down to the delay of gratification, and can they delay this pleasurable experience, this hedonistic drive and urge towards something that they have been comfortable with, in order to create something new that they will be comfortable with. They will get more comfortable in the discomfort of doing the hard thing.
Exactly.
At the beginning, you said that people are kind of confused by this idea that they need to go through a hard thing in order to get to a good thing. Do you believe that a person can have like the silver spoon life and still live like a successful, actualized life?
I think a lot of that comes down to upbringing as far as the silver spoon part, because I think that most people are they're given all of these great things, and then if they're ever in a position where they're released into the world to kind of be left up to their own devices, I think that's when they wind up coming up with problems because they've never dealt with any on their own. I think this is why you see so many like super rich people doing stupid stuff like drugs and shoplifting and whatnot, because they've never gone through anything difficult. So they're kind of just like spiraling there, because as a whole, I think that the entire point of life is to overcome things and to grow from it. Like every good thing that you could think of comes from working through something. The strongest relationships come when you've worked through something together. The strongest body comes from when you've overcome the most amount of weight. So the most successful businesses solve the most amount of problems. That's just how things play out as a whole. So I think that the absence of problems, so to speak, is prohibitive to you having a good and meaningful life. Now, from the outside looking in, people might see that you could just do whatever it is that you want, you have no concerns, and some people will think that that is an amazing thing, but they're not actually experiencing it themselves. So yeah, the hard choice in the long run winds up being the better choice, because it's what leads to the better outcome. All of the easier things to do in the moment lead to nothing good. It's easiest to order the DoorDash, to eat the fast food, to overeat the pizza, to sit around playing video games, to do drugs, to drink because it makes you feel good right now. But in long run, that leads to being fat and poor and depressed and addicted to stuff. And in the moment, it's harder to go to the gym. It's harder to wake up early. It's harder to do the work. It's harder to turn down the fun with your friends. It's harder to stay faithful in your relationship if there's attractive women propositioning you or whatever the case may be. But in the long run, that leads to you being in shape. That leads to you being successful. That leads to you having a very strong relationship. That leads to you being fulfilled with yourself. So the harder choice in the long run is the one that pays off on the back end, and the easier choice in the beginning is the one that winds up costing you at the end. Like as a whole, everything in life has a cost, everything has a trade-off, everything has a price that you pay. And the question just is, are you going to pay it now or are you going to pay it later?
I think we do need the challenges. I think that when you're speaking about even like if a person lived this silver spoon lifestyle, and you mentioned that that's why you see these rich people, they end up shoplifting and doing these things. I think they're unconsciously attracted to creating a challenge in their lives. They're unconsciously attracted to the alcoholism because they know that it will, even though they had this lifestyle of riches, like they've grown with rich parents or whatever, then that actually created the dysfunction and the trials and tribulations that they needed to actualize the reality of the great life that they already had, but you somehow still need to earn it. Even if you already had it, you somehow need this, there's like an unconscious attracting you towards the adversity, towards the challenges. I think that when you are feeding those bad habits or the dysfunction or those mental disorder, those identities, the victimhood, all of that, that is, you're feeding this demon that is growing stronger. You're giving it all of the fuel that it needs to possess you, to be stronger and more encompassing of your life, possessing you, as opposed to feeding a faith in God, or faith in this future trajectory of what you could become. This future trajectory could be fed, but it gets fed in a delayed gratification kind of way. It gets fed by, you do the hard thing because it takes longer to get the reward. But if you do the easy thing, the bad habit, the ordering DoorDash, that kind of thing, then you are feeding this immediate gratification demon that is possessing you, and possesses you in so many different ways, all the different identities of dysfunction that you could relate to. It just bothers me so much how often, because I'm in mental health, and I have other colleagues, peers that, we're all different human beings, so we have different perspectives. But I think a lot of times I have a perspective that is a little bit the antithesis of some of the ways that they are approaching mental health for people, and that's unfortunate. I think that there's a both and there's a way to be in both, and I think that is actually the most challenging thing, to hold both of those opposing ideas simultaneously, to be in that kind of gray area. I think that's kind of the most challenging thing, and people are just wanting to be one way or the other. It just creates this cycle of people that love to be, I'm depressed. They love to be, I'm ADHD, I'm this, I'm that. And it is not serving them. I've had one of my best friends, childhood friends, has always identified with ADHD, but I have never stopped telling him, like, it's just better to not say that about yourself. It's just better to not really identify that way, to work out this narrative, and work on a recontextualizing, like you said, a recontextualizing of a narrative that is going to serve you better. I just hate seeing this all the time, and that's kind of what I felt about your content, when you're being so straightforward with these men, and you don't even know, you're kind of speaking to like an archetypal man. You're not speaking to anybody directly. You're turning on your camera and speaking from your heart, speaking from your soul, probably a mirrored, weakened version of you at some level would need to hear. It's like you're speaking to some weak version of yourself. This is what they would need to hear right now. You're weak right now. You are choosing weakness, and I'm not proud of you doing that, making that choice. And then you just have so many people that just love to identify with their weaknesses and make it their whole identity. It's crazy.
Yeah, and that goes back to what we were saying. It's like people, I think naturally everyone is looking for something to overcome. They are looking for some sort of struggle. So you see so many people who take these things, and now you see people running around, I'm ADHD Kevin, I'm neurodivergent Nina, and all of this, and their whole entire personality is based around microaggressions and the way that they're disadvantaged and oppressed by society, and they have 87 different types of labels, because I think that deep down they're just trying to find something to struggle against. But unfortunately for them, they've picked a battle that's kind of self-defeating, in the fact that they've taken their struggles into, they want to be misunderstood by the rest of the world. But the trade-off of that is that they've now labeled themselves with so many things that has done nothing but convince themselves that they can't actually be better than they currently are. And I think that's a huge problem. That's why I completely agree with what it is that you said about stop calling yourself that. It doesn't even matter if you truly have it. It doesn't matter if at at the end of the day, if depression is a real, that's perfectly fine. You will be in a much better position if you don't sit there telling yourself that you're depressed, period, because then you will at least have the outlook that you could better yourself, that you could better your situation, that you can improve what it is that you're going through, that you can overcome all of these things. But when you're telling yourself that you have ADD, ADHD, whatever the case may be, you're also telling yourself on some level that you can't. When you're telling yourself that you're depressed, you're telling yourself on some level that you can't. You might be saying, I could do the best that I can with it, but you're still saying that you can't. This is the same problem that people have when they run around talking about, well, my race is holding me back. Women don't like me because of my height. In some part of your mind, you're saying you can't get better because of this certain thing. And even if that's true, what serves you is to think that it is something that you can control. Because the problem is, if you have this belief that, say me, I believe I'm black, no one's going to hire me. So I go to a job interview and I don't get the job. So now in my mind, it's because I'm black. I can't do anything about that. But what I can do is assess the way that I dress. I can assess the way that I was sitting there. Did I have bad posture? Am I slumped over? Am I not speaking well? Am I saying too many ums and ahs? Maybe I'm using profanity. Maybe I'm not answering questions directly. Maybe my resume isn't great. Maybe there's a bunch of nonsense on there. Maybe I'm not making eye contact. Maybe my body language is off. Maybe my clothes were dirty. My shirt was wrinkled. Something. There's something that I can fix, and there's something that I can make a change to and come back to give myself a better opportunity because I've taken it and I've put it upon myself instead of this nebulous idea of something outside of myself that there's nothing that I can do about. Because the worst position that you could ever put yourself in is one of helplessness. And that's what you do when you assign yourself these labels and you adopt all of these beliefs, is that you say that you can't get better. You can't get ahead because you're a woman. You can't get a job because you're black. You can't focus because of your ADHD. You can't stop drinking because it's a disease, because of your parents, because of your upbringing. None of these things serve you in the long run. And while I'm a big supporter in what's true, at some point, I'm also a big believer in what serves you is more important than what's true. So you need to adopt and go with what's going to help you make the best of any situation. If I walk outside tomorrow and get shot, no matter what I do, I have a bullet in me. But me sitting there saying, oh my God, I'm going to die, and looking up statistics and saying the vast majority of people who get shot in the stomach die isn't going to help me, because at some point then in the back of my mind I'm going to accept my fate. But if I sit there and I take it and say, okay, cool, that's fine, this is here, but I'm going to make it to a hospital, I'm going to be fine, they're going to fix this, and as a whole this is going to make me stronger. Even if I do die from it, I still died in a much better place fighting for my life than just sitting there accepting my fate. And that's what most people do, is they put themselves in a position where they have no choice but to accept their fate. And a lot of the time they themselves have assigned themselves this fate by accepting it.
You will die quicker. You will die quicker. Do you need any more information than that? Like, is there any more truth that to not identify with these negative diagnoses than you are dying quicker? Because all of it is like, it's a great example. Getting shot, like, you're dying quicker because you're telling yourself, I'm gonna die. This I can't, the I have this thing, and that creates all of the I can'ts that you just described so well. Like, all of those I can'ts, you're making them so definitive. You're making them so concrete that I will never be able to have a focused attention. I will never be able to create and develop a strength of attention because I am disordered, because I am dysfunctional. I feel so bad for the human condition that has created that inside themselves. This whole conversation and maybe your content in general, or something that I say, or I can be very direct and forward with people, and so it can seem like it's not coming from a place of heart, but I think it's coming more from a place of heart. I think I care about you more. And I think that that's kind of what you were saying earlier. It's like, it's not, I really want you to be better. I really want you to survive the gun wound. Like I really don't want you to die faster to this. So please, like, let me help you become aware of the mental condition that you are reinforcing every day in yourself, so that my fellow men, my fellow tribe, my fellow humans in the world can be empowered. We can do real stuff. We can do better things. We can actualize our lives. We can grow and develop and transform ourselves and then the world as a result of our own individual transformation. So it's so right there, but people People get confused because it is attacking their insecurities. It's attacking somewhere that is soft and sensitive. And I love you. I care about you. I get it. Your soft place is being poked at. It's being prodded at. But it's okay. It's not a desire to twist a knife inside of you. It's a desire to take that knife out of you and for you to actually heal, for you to actually just not die faster. I want to help. Jason wants to help you, wants to be of service to the greater good of humanity, of men, of humanity, of all of those things. Now, in that same kind of note of like, oh, it can be misunderstood. This very direct approach can be misunderstood, even though maybe it's more of a place of from heart. Maybe also it can be misunderstood. So I want to ask you about being dangerous. Like, is that, there's like a misunderstanding that can come across if I were to tell somebody, or it's the negative connotations of things. And connotations, that's your choice. Like, you're choosing what kind of connotation to receive from a word or a sentence or some sort of message that I'm pushing to you. You're deciding if Jason's content is upsetting you. You're making that decision. Like, it doesn't have to upset you. You don't have to identify so strongly with the victim that he is trying to speak through and grow and develop in you. You don't have to choose that, but you can. And so, is it okay if I tell you I'm dangerous? I mean it. I do mean it. Like, I 1,000% mean it. I'm dangerous, and that doesn't mean I want to hurt you. That doesn't mean I want to hurt anybody. It means that I am capable. I am strong, and we can be on the same team, or we can be against each other, or whatever. Like, you can make this choice also. What is your ideas around like this idea that a man? I think a lot of this was perpetuated by Jordan Peterson. Like a lot of his talks, his narrative have been around this idea that it's better for a man to be dangerous and capable and choose not to, instead of a weak man not being able to. Like, that is actually the weakness of society, if we are incapable.
Yeah, that's 1000% accurate. And I'm a big believer that the most dangerous man is a man who is not dangerous at all, because it is the people who lack strength, who are unable to defend themselves, whether that be physically or mentally, emotionally, whatever the case may be, who do the most heinous things. These are the mass shooters and the spousal abusers and the sexual assaulters and all of that, are the people who lack the confidence and the courage and the strength within themselves and to be who it is that they are supposed to be. So they lash out and everyone else pays the price for it. It is those are the bullies that are beating people up for no reason, and that's the one who's robbing random people on the street and who's committing all of the worst crimes out there, are the cowards, are the weak people, because they don't know any other way and they don't have the strength to do the things that they are supposed to do, because those are the difficult things. So they take the easy route and they act on how they're feeling, or they take the immediate gratification route and everyone else pays the price for it. So people put this negative connotation around dangerous and think that you're sitting there, or that people are saying that you should be some sort of bully or something along the lines of this. And people kind of rope this in with this toxic masculinity stuff too. And I'm a big believer that it's not even just my belief, this is fact. The things that they're calling toxic masculinity is the absence of masculinity, is the absence of, again, strength, is the absence of all of these things. These are where the issues come from, because like we were talking about before, as a whole, strength is restraint. Like, the strong thing to do is not assault people that you can beat up, even if you feel like you have a good reason to. The weak thing is to beat up people because you're capable of it. The weak thing is to make other people suffer because you're suffering. The weak thing is to take advantage of people because you have the ability to do it. All of those are the lack of masculinity. Those are the lack of strength. And that's what the problem is. And that's what is perpetuated and pushed nowadays, being docile and all of this. And this is what it is that creates the problem, because people who can fight don't want to get in fights because they know what it's like to be punched in the face. Nobody wants to be punched in the face. Nobody who has actually experienced violence wants to experience violence. Nobody wants to see people die who has seen people die. Nobody wants to do any of this stuff who has actually experienced it. It's the people who don't. These are the people that you see online calling for war and all kinds of assaults and stuff overseas. These people need dies, explosions, and is people who have never experienced these things. And these are the first people to perpetuate it and to turn to it because they don't know what it's like. They don't know what it's like to be beat up somewhere. So they go talking about everybody because they think that they're in some sort of better position and they're not going to have to deal with these things. All of this stuff that is what it is that causes the problem. Again, back to what we're going to, weakness with the alcoholism, with the overeating, with the sitting around doing nothing, with the making excuses, with the taking advantage of people, with the committing crimes. All of this comes from weakness, and people have bastardized and twisted the idea of being of strength, of stoicism, of being dangerous to mean something toxic and negative. So they encourage the opposite of it. And most people, again, are pushed to go along with the mainstream narratives. And that's where they wind up with all of these problems. Like people like to talk about whenever there's some sort of shooting or whatnot, and they say, well, you got to ban the gun. It's not the gun's fault. Guns have always existed. You could look up statistically back in the day, it was like the same percentage of guns and whatnot. But what's different now is that they are pushing all of this soft stuff that you need to be, you need to always feel your feelings and act on your emotions, and all of it is. And this is what the result of that is, because a school shooting or you hitting your spouse or whatever, these are temper tantrums thrown by grown men. This is what it looks like. This is the equivalent of the child who doesn't get the toy that he wants, so he starts breaking stuff and screaming on the floor. It just looks much worse now that it's older. So, and this is what happens from people who were never taught that strength, that restraint, that stoicism, that dangerousness, that ability to conduct themselves, to keep their composure. This is the result of it, is everything that we are dealing with now, and it is nothing but a problem. And they attack the people who are going against it as the ones who are pushing the problem. They'll say stuff to myself about, you're telling people not to suppress their emotions. And I'm not telling anyone to suppress their emotions. I'm saying learn to conduct yourself. Just because you're mad, it doesn't mean you have to act mad. Just because you're sad, it doesn't mean you have to act sad. This is strength. This is restraint. This is what will make you better. This is what will contribute to the betterment of the world around you. It's okay to feel a way, but what's not okay is to let those feelings dictate what it is that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you can experience those emotions, experience all of that and relish in it. All the pain, be proud of it. Be proud that you're going through some hard shit. It's important. Like, would you rather a life that didn't, like, would you really, I think if you sat down and you really asked yourself, would you rather a life that had no problems? I think that if you really were logical, you would say no, because that what is the point? There would be no point. And I love what you said. I've said this before. I don't like this concept of toxic masculinity. It is not serving the very thing that those that are speaking about the problems of toxic masculinity want to serve. It's not serving those things.
The
The more
opposite.
that you are talking about it, the more that you're perpetuating it, right? You're continuing to perpetuate this idea that just masculinity in general is toxic. You know, I'm never speaking about toxic femininity. I'm talking about people that are exhibiting toxic behaviors, period. And then what you're speaking about with it's tantrums of grown men, of grown human beings. These are tantrums because they are so uncomfortable with sitting in the feelings, and sitting in the feelings, that is where the strength comes from. It comes from sitting in that pain. That's real strength. But because it's so challenging, it hurts so much, you want to project it into the outside world. You want it to be all out here instead of in you, because you're just incapable of holding on to it.
Yeah, it's nothing wrong with having those feelings. Those feelings are actually a good thing, and they're guides to you improving yourself and to you bettering your life as a whole. But people are taught to alleviate it and to make it go away. I find it funny that there's people all the time who talk about what's nothing wrong with being sad, and those are the same people who will go to months of therapy to figure out how to deal with and cope with and get rid of their sadness. But like, if there's nothing wrong, why are you or nothing wrong with it? Why are you trying so hard to fight it off? Why are you not taking what that sadness is telling you and using that to improve yourself? Because in the other direction, you don't go and sit down with your therapist when you're happy. You don't say, I had a happy thought the other day, we need to unpack this for the next 2 weeks. No, you take it, you like it, you relish in it. You might think about what it is that made you happy and how you could do more of this, or be happy about the memory, whatever the case may be. But then when people get to feeling sad, they want to immediately go and figure out how to never ever feel that way again. And their solution is always to do everything but what is actually necessary to do. Like it's telling you something. You're sad for a reason. There's something that you need to address. This is your emotion. This is a guide saying, hey, go do this. Same thing with the anxiety thing. You start feeling anxious. You're feeling anxious for a reason. You can alleviate this if you look at what it is that you're feeling anxious about and say, what will I do that will alleviate this anxiety about this future thing coming up? Because you don't feel that you're prepared for whatever it is that's going to happen. Cool. You could do something about this. You could fix this. And this is your mind saying, hey, here's a thing that you need to work on, but nobody wants to take it as that. And I want to touch on real quick what you said about the life without problems. I find it interesting. If you look at anything that people watch or participate in for entertainment, whether that be TV shows or movies or video games or books or even game shows, all of them are based entirely around people encountering and then overcoming problems. You watch people in a TV show, even in a comedy, they have some sort of problem that comes up, some sort of misunderstanding in their relationship, a fight with a friend, an issue at work, whatever the case may be. In movies on a bigger scale, the Avengers have to save the world. Your football game is them trying to beat the other team. Your game shows is them trying to beat the questions. All of this is people encountering, solving problems. But if you were to take away the problems, there's no point to any of this. There'd be no point of watching Who Wants to Be a Millionaire where somebody just sits down and they say, here's $5, $10, and just keeps handing them money. That's boring. There's no point in watching the movie with all of the people with the superpowers just sitting around kicking it because the world is super safe for forever. There's no point in playing the video game where you're just wandering around with all of your weaponry with no enemies to fight. But when it comes to people's own lives, they want to remove themselves from this concept and have absolutely zero problems, even though they would have no interest in watching or playing that version of life whatsoever.
Yeah. They don't want to experience the very thing that they're entertained by. They're like watching this TV, they're watching the movie, they're watching this beautiful adventure that somebody is going on through all of the trials and tribulations, all of the obstacles, all of the adversity, and they don't want to experience that. It's not easy to be strong. It's not easy to be in this actualized place of being able to take on the world, to be dangerous. It's not easy. And then choose not to. It's not easy. But choosing the hard thing is it's the better of the choices. And so what people are afraid of then is to be the hero of their own narrative, of their own story. This world is not like all of the problems that are displayed in the world, all of the problems that we come face to face with politically and societally, all of those things. It's not because there's too much strength in the world. And a lot of people will get into a victim kind of perspective. Oh, there are some problems and stuff. There's nuances to this conversation as many other conversations, but I don't necessarily think that the problem is because somebody has $1 billion. I don't necessarily think that it's maybe the choices that they're making with that $1 billion is a problem, but their strength in having resources, that's not the issue. It's how they are using those resources. And so it's not, all of these problems are not because of too much strength in the world. It's because there's too much weakness in the world. It is because there's been a long time perpetuation of it's okay to be soft and weak and be trampled by the herd. We'll band together and we'll protest against this. And I don't know that is the best choice. I don't know that is really what I want to see my people or the people around me, the people that I care about, the people that I admire for their strength. I don't necessarily know that I want to see them, being in a place of weakness. Experience everything, but let's work on strengthening our strengths, becoming more strong for this rippling effect of what that means. You are become as strong as the people that are around you. Bring some strong, dangerous people around you. It goes into your friendships and all kinds of levels of relationship. We are social beings, so relationships is everything, but our relationships to our partner, if I'm speaking to men now, or even if I'm speaking to women, it's that your partner does not want a weak partner. Like we need a strong partner. You want me to be strong for you. I need you to be strong for me too.
Yeah, 1000%. I mean, I'm a big believer that the absolute best thing that any individual person can do for the world at large is to become the best version of themselves. Like, you should be as strong as you could be. You should be as successful as you could be. You should be as honest in all of the things that you should be. And then you set that example and you give that energy to everybody around you, and they'll give that energy to everybody around them. It just creates a ripple effect. Like all of this stuff, like you said, with the protest, yeah, people want to gather together and wave their little signs and say, we don't like what you're doing, do something different. And I know that that's what people have been told is the way to do things for forever, but there's also a reason that this is what it is that they tell you that you're supposed to do, because now you feel like you've done something. It's a very low barrier to entry, but nothing ever actually comes from it. But you could pat yourself on the back for saying, hey, look at me, I walked around with my sign, I put up my tweet, I hashtagged this, I reposted that, or whatever. And it's the encouragement of people to not actually do anything to make the changes that they would like to see. And it's also just another example of people putting the onus to solve these problems on everyone else, because that's exactly what it is that people are talking about. Like you said, with the billionaire thing, I see all the time people talking about we should outlaw billionaires and all of this. Is like, first and foremost, you don't have the power to do anything. You're tweeting, no one cares what it is that you say. But secondly from that, this is still the premise that everyone else needs to go out and do something and take these people's money and give it to somebody else, rather than the idea, first and foremost, you go make some money and give it to somebody else. How about that, if you feel like this is the solution? But no one's ever willing to give away their own money. They want everyone else to do it, because this is all just meaningless posturing. You're not actually trying to do anything, but you becoming the best version of you would actually do something for somebody. And then you can go out there and you can make some money, and you can start doing with the money what it is that you swear all of these other people should be doing with their money. So you can start your business and you can pay people this livable wage that you swear that everyone should be earning for doing everything that everyone does just because, and you have all of the great reasons for it. That's fine. Go make it happen, instead of sitting there talking about other people need to make this happen. That's what everyone's kind of been reduced to nowadays, is complain about stuff until something happens, and it's never going to. So there's just more and more stuff to complain about, while there are other people who are out there, the people who are making the billions of dollars, millions of dollars, or whatever, are going out and trying to get what it is that they want. They are going after these things. There are people who are actually trying to affect change that some people just sit there ranting about and talking about a whole bunch of nothingness, because they're willing to go out there and actually put in the work. And that's what nobody is willing to do nowadays. And that is, again, weakness right there. Your unwillingness to do anything that you're supposed to be doing is because you're weak and you would rather be doing something else. It's because you're weak and you want to depend on somebody else to do it. It's because you're weak and you just want some sort of handouts, or you feel that you deserve something just because it exists. Like the people who talk about that housing is a human right. I'm not saying that people should be homeless. I'm simply saying that the idea behind that is the idea that someone is obligated to go build houses for people and give it to them. That's an insane thing to do, because this is still other people need to take care of me because I don't want to do it myself. And the problem with that is that leads to people pandering to the lowest common denominator. Who's willing to do the least gets the most. I think that gives a good idea of the mindset of the population at large, is people's unwillingness to go out there and do for themselves, unwillingness to better themselves, unwillingness to do the difficult things. They just want everyone else to make their life better just for the simple fact that they exist.
You want to see more solutions in the world? You want to see more strength in the world? Be strong. Develop yourself. I don't think you should waste your time at a protest. I like what you said. It's a low barrier to entry. I don't think you should waste your time at a protest. I think that all of the protesters should be at the library figuring out how to change those laws. Let's raise somebody to be the representative of our cause and our issues and what we want change to happen. Instead, you're trying to yell at somebody in a very tall building at the way top of this office that cannot hear you. They
It's
really cannot
ridiculous.
hear you. They're in closed doors. Your voice isn't being heard. your voice in a protest, unfortunately, is not being heard. And if you were going to the library, there's some movement that could be happening. It's funny because we were talking about pacifism and like like nonviolent protests, and in the words of the most famous nonviolent protester, Gandhi, be the change that you want to see in the world. Do you want to see weakness in the world? Because our conversation is telling you, at least the two of us resonate with this, is that weakness is the issue.
Every time.
If you brought it down to the the baseline principle of what's going on in the world, weakness is the problem. There is weakness. People in other countries, other nations and stuff, wanting to shoot nuclear firearms into another nation, that is weak. That is you being afraid of the competition of your nation rising to the success and doing the work that you need to do, and you're worried that the answers to new technology are going to dry up. You're worried that new innovation is somehow going to dry up and you're not going to be able to continue to make the profit that you need to make. And so you want to fire weapons against other people. That is weakness. But there is some level of re-education and reframing on what it means to be strong or what it means to be weak. The problem is weakness. So be the change that you want to be in the world. Be strong if you want to see some strength. Be intelligent if you want to have a better attention span, then be somebody that has a better attention span. And that doesn't seem so as easy and cut and dry as I'm saying it, but you can work at it. I promise that you can develop all of these things. You can develop everything that you want to be to go after and capture the things that you want in the world. You can do that. And I hope you do that, because then we get to see that possibility. We get to reap the benefits of the permission that you are giving to us to do the same thing. We get to reap those benefits. Thank you so much for giving us permission by going and doing the hard thing and becoming strong as a result of that, so you can make greater impact in the world around you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
No, that's beautiful, and I absolutely agree. I think that there is nothing more empowering than seeing other people accomplish things. Like when you see that what someone else has done, it's proof that you could do the thing too. When you see someone have overcome this obstacle, it's proof that you can overcome your own obstacle. When you see the people who used to be 400 or 500 pounds and got into great shape, it's proof that people who are 400 or 500 pounds can get into great shape. We see people come from the bottom, make a bunch of money. It's proof that you could do that too. All of these things that you see around you are proof that you could do it. And unfortunately, most people don't have the mindset that it applies to them, because they want to sit there and point at everyone else and act like they're special or outliers, or they cheated, or they're liars, or something to take the onus off of them from having to do the work. Again, if you want to, like you say, if you want to improve the world, you need to improve yourself. I'm a big believer that if you're going to run around being a mental health advocate, then you need to have good mental health. But it'd be a bunch of depressed people running around all the time talking about mental health. Like, you're a terrible advocate for this. If you want to sit there and push for people to be in shape, you need to be in good shape. If you want to push for the redistribution of wealth, you need to be a wealthy person who is redistributing your wealth yourself. You need to walk the walk that you want everyone else to walk, so that you inspire more people to walk that walk. And I'm also a big believer that you should make sure that other people see you doing this, because you never know who needs to see you specifically do it or hear a message from you specifically. I'm a big believer that everybody is not everybody else's avatar. Like, I know on some level I say the same stuff as, say, Tony Robbins or other motivational-esque speakers, but everybody won't hear that from Tony Robbins and resonate with it. They'll hear it from me and resonate with it, or they might not hear it from me and resonate with it, but they might hear it from you and resonate with it. So it's up to you to affect the people that you can affect, because nobody can affect everybody in the whole entirety of the world. Like, I've been hearing a lot of the stuff that I say for my whole entire life from people that I would never listen to, because despite what people say, when you have not yet tapped into the overall message, the messenger itself is important, and you need that appropriate messenger for you, or for you to be that messenger for somebody else, because you can spark a change that only you can spark in said person. And that is your duty. And if you are not doing that, then you are falling short of why it is that you are here. Going back to what it is that we said at the beginning, I believe that is a purpose that everybody has, is to inspire others to be the better and best version of themselves. Whatever that might look like might differ, but that, I believe, that is everybody's purpose as a whole.
Right. You need to be the right vehicle for the message. And Jason, you are the right vehicle. Thank you so much for being on this conversation. Thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it. It's gone by so fast. I'm telling you, we were just hitting them with gold, 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 gold. And I absolutely loving it. Thank you so much, Jason. Everybody, you can find Jason on Instagram. You're on other social media
I'm
platforms as
on
well?
everything: the Jason
Yeah.
Lamar, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. What's the X?
All of it,
Wherever it
all of it.
is.
The Jason Lamar. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me. I really appreciate it, brother.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you having me. It was great talking to you.
You're thinking, who is this man talking?